Ladies and gentlemen, would you be okay if your adolescent child is involved in a physical relationship with another teenager and it's not a criminal offense? In a suggestion that, if implemented, will have huge ramifications, the Supreme Court of India has urged the centre to consider decriminalizing consensual romantic relationships among children under the age of 18 years under the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences, or the POCSO Act. Saying that POCSO is not meant to target consensual relationships, the top court urged the formation of a panel on the issue. In fact, the SC has also said that the centre should consider forming sex education policy. The court's argument is that youngsters engaging in consensual relationships should not be subjected to criminal proceedings under a law which is originally designed to protect minors from abuse. The bench also emphasized the need for a comprehensive sexual and reproductive health education policy. There are obviously mixed reactions that have come in, with some saying that decriminalizing will protect consensual relations, reduce the misuse of POCSO, and save teenagers from legal proceedings. On the other hand, those who are against the top court's suggestions say that this would lead to a rise in teen pregnancies, manipulation might increase in such cases, and the implementation of this move will always be a dominant challenge. So should India decriminalize teenage relationships or continue with the existing laws against minors in intimate relationships? Let's try and get a perspective on this. On the broadcast, I'm joined by Deshratan Nigam, he's a lawyer, Pradeep Rawat, parent and citizen voice, as well as Abha Singh, lawyer and activist, are all joining us. Good evening and namaskar to all of you. Before I come to you, let's listen in to this reaction.
The problem is with the law. Problem is with the POCSO Act, which says that any physical relationship with a child who's less than 18 would be treated as a heinous offense, with punishment minimum is 10 years up to life imprisonment. And Supreme Court has said that while in context of the West Bengal order, where this young girl who was in a physical relationship and her husband was given life imprisonment, and she came to the court and said that I am married to this person now, I have a son, and I want the rape charges to be removed. And the government should not pass any law without taking the stakeholders into confidence. That means the NGOs that are working in the child rights, the State Commission, the National Commission for Child Rights, all these should sit together, decide what is to be done.
Of course, that was Abha Singh, and she's with us on the broadcast as well. Abha Singh, before I come to you, let me get in a word from Pradeep Rawat, who comes here as a voice of a parent who might have concerns about what the Supreme Court of India has suggested. Pradeep Rawat, your first thoughts on what you think the Supreme Court has suggested. Do you think this should be decriminalized, intimate relationships between children under the age of 18 years, or do you think it's going to harm them and it's going to erode the fabric, the social fabric of the society?
First of all, thank you for having me on the show. See, since quite a longer time, this law has been quite misused, especially when, two teenagers who don't really know about the laws, who don't really know about the sexual, liberation that is going on in the world. But what actually happens is, if a parent is angry or a parent doesn't feel that his or her child is doing something which should not be done, they tend to file a criminal case. And I'll tell you one thing very frankly, even my child, my son, he's a teenager, he's in class 11 now. We tend to ignore the subject of sexual education with children. It is happening all over the world, especially in India, that parents don't teach their children what is exactly the sexual education is all about. Same case happens with the schools also. Schools also don't really bother about the subject. And then on the other hand, we expect children to understand everything on their own. And what they do, they go to internet, they go to certain sites which are not supposed to be seen by them, and then they tend to learn something which is not supposed to be learned. So what I'm saying is, this
but Pradeep Rawat, would you still say that for new age parents, new generation parents who are open with their children, in fact, children are also reciprocal towards the kind of openness that parents show to them in sharing such thoughts and in perhaps clarifying their doubts?
See, I'll tell you, since I work quite regularly with the parents as well, even the young age parents, the so-called new generation, even when it comes to discussing the topic of sexual education with children, they still consider it as a taboo subject. They feel if they discuss this kind of subject with children, they are basically kind of, asking them to go ahead with it. So what I feel is this suggestions or urging by the Supreme Court to the government of India is right. Parents should help not just look at it, look into this perspective just from an angle that this is right or this is wrong. They should be discussed. But what I feel is sexual education is very important. It should be given not only from the parent side, from the school side, but society as a whole should understand that children are now exposed to a lot of stuff in the world. So we just cannot just shut our eyes and believe that nothing is happening in the world.
Okay.
World is changing, world is evolving. We got to understand that things need to change.
Sure, the world is evolving, Abha Singh, and the fact that, children are growing up perhaps earlier than they used to, getting a lot of exposure from the world. This kind of a suggestion has also led to concerns about the kind of situation that perhaps America is grappling with. That is the issue of teenage pregnancies. And some of the people feel that if this is given a go-ahead and it's decriminalized, it will lead to a rise in teenage pregnancies in India as well.
See, if we go by figures, a lot of teenage pregnancies do take place even now, and there are abortions. So that is why the Supreme Court has said that issues of reproductive health may be also linked into. So law, if it is being misused, if it is not able to deliver justice, then definitely Supreme Court is right in saying that adolescent consensual sex needs to be decriminalized. I, as a lawyer, during my last decade of practice, have seen that so many school students in the standard 11th and 12th have eloped with their girlfriends of the same class, and then these girls, under pressure from their parents, have filed rape charges. So you expect a 17-year-old school kid whose only mistake or whose only crime was falling in love and having relationship with his classmate being stigmatized as a rapist and put behind bars where they are even more sexually abused. You know what conditions are in these shelter homes. So I think Supreme Court is very right. And also it defeats the definition of rape. If you go by the POCSO Act, it says penetrative and unilateral. It is forced upon. So, but this is consensual. So that is what Supreme Court is trying to say, that when you are saying it is consensual, it does not fall into the definition of the offense. And that is why the government needs to look into, and definitely with a permissive society today, with sex not being a taboo at all, why should an innocent boy or a girl be put behind bars as a rapist?
Okay, Deshrata Nigam, do you want to come in on this? The fact that, yes, there have been several cases in the past where parents, family members, they've used the POCSO Act, in fact, misused it for their own vested interests.
Well, in fact, take any act, whether it is in matrimonial relationship or in otherwise, or Scheduled Caste Atrocities Act, all acts are being misused. But that's not the purpose of those acts. The ones who misuse, the law must punish them. The objectives of those acts are wonderful. And however, the punishment for the people who misuse it is not much there in our legal system. So that aspect needs to be, highlighted and should be strengthened. Now, in this particular case, the man was a major. Please understand that, and the girl was minor. However, the Supreme Court is saying between two adolescents, we both have to be minor. Please understand that.
Yeah.
There, when the discretion of the courts can come, and when both the parties out there are minors. And in the case of one part, the girl being minor and the boy being major, or the man, then the courts have to take a different view. In this particular case, yes, the girl married and she came forward, and there's a child also. Therefore, the courts has said that this will not be a precedent. This case will not be a precedent. And therefore, one must not lay down general guidelines based on this particular act. So far, the other panelists were saying, the high courts have already started interpreting this particular act about consensual romantic relationship or sex, whether it is Delhi High Court, West Kolkata High Court, or the Madras High Court, whereas Abha pointed out that penetration, so to come under this particular act of rape, has to be unilateral. If it is consensuous, the court says it is not covered under POCSO. These are interpretations coming from the at least 3 high courts I'm aware of. So the Supreme Court is also thinking on those lines. Yes, I can understand you require the topic of this discussion, which is going on, is to be discussed at homes, should be brought in our policies, both reproductive and sex education. It is there, but probably in 11, 12, probably it has to be brought down much below. And even in 11, 12, it is just cosmetic, which is going on. Therefore, people are resorting to, as the parent on the panel said, to, things on the websites, which are not educative, which probably incite you more towards all those things. So those are the aspects that need to be taken care of. Supreme Court, giving directions to the, so far as policies are concerned about education, sex education, it's all right. But to change the law, it is the parliament. Please understand that. It's the parliament that can make a call on this. Whether our society is ready to make those changes or not, parliament has to discuss it if they feel it is necessary to discuss it. Supreme Court at best can request the parliament
Yeah, I
to
think that's
look
the
into
important
it.
point, whether the society is ready to make this kind of a change. Abha Singh, the fact that there are, of course, younger parents who are more open and children are getting involved much earlier. Of course, there is also that question whether the society will be able to take this overall huge change and the ramifications of it.
The society will have to take it, because if we have daughters, then we have sons also. So if you are ready to get a young school kid tagged as a rapist because your daughter decides to have a physical relationship, a consensual adolescent sexual relationship, then you have to be prepared that at the other time it can be your son also. So society has to look into it when these type of cases are increasing and the POCSO Act is being used, misused, and that is the reason. In fact, what our learned friend said was that in this case, the one was an adult and the other was a minor. That is different. But here we are talking of when both are adolescents, when both are in that same age, we need to look into it. And when punishment is now minimum 10 years to life imprisonment, when you are making the punishment so harsh, then you have to see that no innocent is penalized for no fault of his. So I think the society has to wake up to it, and what is reflected in Supreme Court's observations and order is definitely a reflection of the mindset of the society, because when this young girl will come and has told the court that, look, I have a child, I have a son from the same man, I'm married to him, how can he be called a rapist and how he can go? So then that means you're compounding the offense. But in rape cases, in these heinous offenses, compounding cannot be done. So I think now the parliament will have to look into it. Supreme Court's observations, Supreme Court directions, and now it has put amicus curiae, it has put two senior advocates.
Let me get in Pradeep Rawat into this, Abha Singh. Pradeep Rawat, the society is made of people like you and I, and all of us, all of you panelists who are also on the broadcast. What do you think? How will the society react to it? You as a parent, of course, have your concerns. There are several other parents who will have their own concerns when it's decriminalized. Do you think that we as a social fabric are ready for it?
See, tell you one thing very frankly. Parliament is what? Parliamentary basically is representing us only. Sure. When one of my fellow panelists said that Parliament needs to change the law or make the law, I understand completely. Basically, Parliament is what? It's a reflection of citizens like you and me. So one of us can go to Parliament and become an MP or somebody who can change the laws. So what I feel is society is evolving, society is changing. We as parents need to understand that we need to educate our children, and schools has a very important role to play, because as rightly mentioned, it is just cosmetic education in the schools. They don't really actually tell them what is supposed to be done and what is not supposed to be done, and then children go to these so-called websites and learn something which they should not. That need to change. Schools and parents need to work as a team. Then society will automatically understand that this education, sex education to the children, to the adolescents is very important. And once that happens, this law cannot be misused, because this is happening for a quite long time. This law has been misused. There are instances, many cases where children did something out of curiosity, out of they tend to fall in love or something like that. But that law was misused. So what I feel is society is changing, evolving. We need to understand that things need to change, and children should be taught what they are not learning from parents or schools, and they are wrongly learning from the websites.
Okay,
that is what I feel.
Deshrata Nigam, can I also understand from you, you mentioned how other laws are also misinterpreted and misused, and therefore it leads me to the question, such laws such as the POCSO, there is of course a lot of, do you think there is a lot of gray area as well, as far as, the nitty-gritties of perhaps a sexual assault or a rape are concerned, penetration is concerned, how that is interpreted?
Well, Shreya, in fact, one important distinction that this case has done, they have convicted this person in this particular case, but not sentenced him. So they're sending a message also. It's not that everything is clean chit. So they have convicted him, but in the facts and circumstances of this particular case, they have not sentenced him. So they have upheld the law so far as the law is concerned and carved out one single exception in this particular case. Yes, the law is being misused. Every law which is made is misused all over the world. But it is for our courts to see how to prevent those misuses and to punish those, people who have actually misused. That is where we lack. That is where the India lacks people who misuse. All these laws have come with very good objective, whether it was dowry prohibition, whether it was domestic violence, or, for example, this POCSO cases. But you will find misuse anywhere. And therefore, law is evolving, as everybody on this panel agrees. It is evolving. And through court cases, judgments, it is evolving, like the three high courts I have told you, Delhi High Court, Madras High Court, and Kolkata High Court. They have interpreted differently because penetration has to be unilateral. Like where it is consensus, it is not covered under POCSO. It is evolving slowly. You can't bring everything in a straitjacket through Parliament. Please understand that. Once you make it a straitjacket, what happens? Then more interpretations are required. Let the courts do their own work. They interpret the way they want to. Let us see what were the discussions in the Parliament to actually know the intention of the Parliament when they said penetration is a unilateral act. They were very clear in their mind that it has to be unilateral. It cannot be consensual. Therefore, courts are probably in the right direction, interpreting in a manner so that the adolescents consensual in relationship are not actually harmed. However, if a major is involved, I think courts will have a different perspective.
Sure, absolutely. All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much to all my panelists, Abha Singh, Deshratan Nigam, as well as Pradeep Rawat, for sharing your perspective. Let's wait and watch how the centre responds to this suggestion that has been made by the Supreme Court of India. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a short break. We'll continue with news and updates on the other side.